in this episode.
That's the pitch, isn't it? I mean, that would be like literally the first day. That'd be one of the first things, because that's the pitch to get the ladies. I mean, if you knew how to make balloon animals, wouldn't you just do that?
Right?
Like, isn't that how you get the ladies?
You get a very specific type of lady.
Yeah, right.
Welcome. You're listening to Paleo Cheese Podcast, episode 37, Supportive Partners with Mercedes M. Yardley.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Bannister.
And I'm Chad Lutzke.
And you're listening to Paleo Cheese Podcast, part of the Project Entertainment Network. And Chad, once again, we have a guest today, buddy.
Yeah, we do. This is my very special friend, Mercedes M. Yardley. She's an award-winning author, like the Stoker Award. And some of her books include Pretty Little Dead Girls and the Bone Angel trilogy. Are you done with that? Are you still doing that?
I have the first one done. I'm working on the other two and to get everything else under control.
Okay. Beautiful Sorrows, Little Dead Red. And we both co-wrote books with John Bowden, who I'm representing right now. I got my Bowden shirt on.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So Detritus and Love, that little yarn. So Mercedes, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I had her come on because, I've been wanting to have her come on for a while now, and recently asked her. We were going to have Tim Meyer on here too, but he's got to be with his boy who's very sick right now. So I'm thinking about you, Tim. But tonight we're going to talk about the importance of just having a spouse or a partner who is supportive in your creativity, writing, podcasting, radio, whatever, painting, whatever it is that you're doing that they're not doing, especially if they just can't even relate to it, but they're there, and they're supportive. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about that was just because I've brought this up before. I'm not one of these writers who feel like I'm not the writer that's like, I bleed the words and I must write. If I don't write, then I'll die. And I'm not like that. If nobody read my stuff, I wouldn't write. And if I didn't have my wife and the awesome wife that I do, I probably wouldn't write either. But, I'm not like that. I don't have to. I don't even like the process of writing. I like having it written and having it on the shelf and having people say, hey, I read your book. It was pretty cool. That part of it I like. The rest of it, I don't know about. But
it's work. It's hard.
It's very hard work. And having my wife in my corner to say, yeah, that sucked, or really, that is fantastic. That is really good. She's never really come out and said that sucked. She has told me, I wrote a story once, and the very last line, she said, yeah, no, you got to take that out. And I was like, really? You think it's bad? And I gave it to John Bowden. And he's like, dude, what's up with that last line? You got to take that out of there. I was like, all right, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so I took it out. And in hindsight, it was ridiculous. It was a stupid line that I put in there, and it would have ruined the entire story and the whole tone of the story. So thank you, John. Thank you, Mary. But yeah, stuff like that. She will say, that doesn't work. Not the whole thing. She doesn't necessarily, she has a hard time seeing a bigger picture. Like if I say when I came up with the concept for Foster Homes and Flies, and I was like, hey, I'm going to write this book about a boy who doesn't have a father, and his mom's an alcoholic, and he's really wants to win the spelling bee, and his mom dies, and so he just leaves her body there while he goes to the spelling bee a week later, and he has to deal with her body. And she's like, really? You're gonna write a book about that? A whole book about that? And I was like, you watch. So she does have a hard time, with the whole bigger picture. Like sometimes I won't say anything, and then sometimes I'll tell her the whole thing because I get too excited, and I'll spoil all of it. And sometimes she's like, okay, we'll see. Or if I give her a title of a book or something, title of a story, and she's like, really? I was like, it'll grow on you. Just like a band name or your kid's name or you get used to it.
Your kid's name.
The reason,
you'll get used to it.
I'm wondering about that myself.
The reason why I brought that up is because when my oldest boy, who is 24 now, when he was born, I wanted to name him Shine. And my wife was not down with that. And I was like, you'll get used to it. It's cool, Shine. And so that's his middle name, is Shine. But so, she compromised, and of course she loves it, and just the other day we were talking, I was like, should have named him Shine, man. That'd be really cool. But so that's why I said that. I wasn't like, this is his name, you're gonna get used to it.
It's Dagmar.
Yeah. You're gonna get used to it.
So Mercedes, we don't know your husband, or anything. Share a little bit about what you. Why he's so awesome and
he is so awesome. We're exact opposites. He wears like khaki pants, and he works for the nuclear test site as like a managerial over the budget thing, and and like he's really funny, but you wouldn't know he's funny. Like I know he's funny, but when you first meet him, he's very sweet and polite and very proper, like very, very proper, buttoned down. And I was like, I think I had blue hair when I met him, and like a nose ring, and just kind of a little bit different. But he is so supportive, and he's really funny, and he surprises me constantly. So we were married like 7 years, and then we've been married about 20 years now. We got married. He was 22 and I was 21 when we got married, and we were married 7 years. And then one day he just like pulls out like this balloon, like this long balloon, and starts making balloon animals like randomly. and I was just like, what's this? What's going on here? And he's like, oh yeah, I know how to make balloon animals. You want a poodle? And I had no idea. Like it was like this magical skill that just out of nowhere was like, oh, here's a balloon. Did you know how to do this? So he still surprises me with stuff. He'll just like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Or, he's very like, wears a suit and wears a tie and all this stuff. And then he'll be like, hey, I did this sculpture out of, Play-Doh with the kids. And it's like fantastic. He's very multifaceted.
That's awesome.
Appears very serious, but he's not.
That's like the opposite of me, because my wife, if I'll be like, hey, did I ever tell about that time that I was in Colorado and you say like, yeah, and then you went swimming and you found that thing, and it's like, yeah, she's heard like, I mean, not every story, but it is funny. The stories that I've said, so like she knows everything. It's very rare. Only a couple times a year will I say something. She's like, wow, I didn't know that.
That's new and different.
So that's weird. That is like not me. If I knew how to do that, I'd be like, on the first date, I'd be like, check this out, man.
Yeah, seriously, I would too. I'd be like,
balloon animal.
I have a YouTube video of it.
That's the pitch, isn't it? I mean, that would be like literally the first day. That'd be one of the first things, because that's the pitch to get the ladies. I mean, if you knew how to make balloon animals, wouldn't you just do that?
Right?
Like, isn't that how you get the ladies?
You get a very specific type of lady.
Right.
Like it doesn't occur to him, like, and it's not like he's withholding information. It just doesn't occur to him to be like, oh yeah, you know what? I know how to make balloon animals. Whoop! Like, and for me, I'd be like, I've got to show you this amazing balloon animal I can make. And he's just like, oh yeah, I can do all these things, and he's bilingual. He speaks Russian. So he'll just, which was great because we're watching like the X-Files and he'll translate everything, and he's like, that's not what he's really saying with Krychek.
Now, did he learn that later, or did he learn that growing up?
Served a mission. So he learned that at 21.
See, I went so far as to buy the...
After 7 years, he like popped that out. I was like, okay, your husband's a spy or something.
That one I actually knew, which is funny because his brother also speaks Russian, so I can always tell when they're on the phone to each other, because it's just like really cool. And like our kids, like my son, his name is Nikolai, and we have,
okay,
names, but But
He might be a spy. You might find that out at the 30-year anniversary. He's going to be like, look,
so dimply. I would give him all the information he ever wanted. Like, he just smiles and you're like, sunshine.
Yeah.
And he's really, really good natured. One of my favorite things with the Russian thing, we were talking earlier about Bryce Canyon and this sort of area. That's where he's from in Utah, is up kind of by like Zion National Park and that sort of area.
Yeah.
And there was a volunteer firefighter from Russia that had cut his leg with a chainsaw, like terribly. And they called my husband and they're like, hey, can you translate to this guy? Because here's this like big burly firefighter and they're trying to like hold him down and clean him up, but he's not understanding what's going on. And he's, really, needs to understand what they're trying to do. And my husband just walks in there grinning. He's like, okay, well, I don't know all the medical terminology, but let's figure this out. And it just translated like, hey, they're going to do this. Can you do this? Can you tell them what happened here? Can you, and just, and that was just a day in the life of Luke. Just a day in the life, like. Wow.
You're married to James Bond.
I am married to James Bond.
He's a secret James Bond. Like,
seriously, he's so capable. I'm like, I can't figure this out. I'm freaking out. And he's like, I got this. You know, like my idea of hell, or like in the movies where you're underwater and you're unlocking the key, and there's a pressure to be done, or you're all drowned. I would just flip out and die, and he would be like.
You'd go into panic mode and just not think and just give in. My wife and I are pretty much complete opposite too, as far as like she doesn't absolutely despise horror, but she's not like, hey, let's watch a horror movie. I mean, I think she watched Hereditary with me, and
really?
if it's convenient, then she'll watch it, but she's not like, if I'm like, hey, I'm gonna watch Friday the 13th Part 4 again. Do you want to? She's like, no, I'm out of here. But if she's already sitting there,
no way, he would never, not in a million years, watch Hereditary with me. No.
Yeah, and she's read horror books before. Like Boy's Life is one of her favorite books. But like when it comes to music, like we do like a lot of the same music, but that's mainly from like sometimes when you hear like growing up and one of your parents or something where you're at, they play this CD a lot, and then you take it in, and the next thing you know, years later, it's this nostalgic thing for you, and you're like, I like this, but it was never something you played. A lot of what she listens to is kind of like that because she hears me playing it. But there are some stuff, like the hardcore punk stuff. Yeah, she doesn't want anything to do with anything like that. So I'm not playing that around her, but yeah, in the way that we dress, I dress like I still dress the same way I dressed when I was, 20, and she's not, but she doesn't make me feel like I'm too, like she's not, she's not square or anything. She's got tattoos and stuff. And
you're both artists, she's a painter, sculptor, so I mean, she's an amazing artist. You're an amazing artist. I don't know if Mercedes is aware of that, but the artwork that he has is amazing. The paintings,
I don't know if I'm familiar with your paintings.
Oh goodness, you need to see these. They're amazing. But they have, and I have the privilege actually of knowing his wife. And
that's awesome.
I used to actually work the job that she was working, and she was on maternity leave to give birth to Elijah. Right, Shine. Elijah Shine, and she left for maternity leave, and the place needed somebody to fill the spot, and they hired me. I had no idea who she was, and that's how eventually later we all came together and stuff like that, and found that out. But so they have some things in common. But yeah, totally opposites in many different ways.
Yeah, she's even said probably the most that we're not alike is she has often said. I mean, she likes music. She listens to mostly like Jim Croce or something. Mm-hmm. And so, but she has said often, or at least a handful of times, that she's like, if I never heard another song again my whole life, I'd be fine with that. And I'm just like, I'm such a music fanatic. I have to be listening to music. Like, I don't think I ever go a day without listening to a couple albums. And I just gotta have it. And if I was told you're never going to listen to music again, what a miserable life. And she's just like, that wouldn't bother me. I'm like, oh man, there's just no way.
I'm kind of that way. I'm kind of that way with Angela, man. Like with my wife, we have things that are in common. We share some things in common, but even the things we share in common most of the time are by degree. Mm-hmm. And yet when it comes to music, she listens to K-pop. I could go the rest of my life and never hear a K-pop song and I wouldn't be bummed. And she makes a joke, but we both have the same kind of humor about it, because she will secretly purchase a calendar of K-pop singers. It's like over the top, like over the top fanboy stuff, like you'd see in the old magazines from the 80s and 90s with
okay, K-pop. I've heard you mention this before. Is this with like the pretty Asian boys? Is that
what very attractive, pretty. That's the right word for it. Yeah, very pretty, and they always have like 20 different guys. Their philosophy of
they're Asian boy bands.
Asian boy, Asian girl, right? So Korean pop. That's just
okay.
And so she's really into that. I'm really into sad music. So I listen to music that's like super depressing. And I like that. I like guitars and classical. I don't think she would ever listen to classical music. I read poetry. She reads fiction. I read nonfiction. She reads fiction. I read newspapers. She wants nothing to do with it. Maybe she'll, check out some kind of a page on Telegram for funny memes or something. But so we have a lot of those differences. And yet when it comes to things like parenting, and when it comes to her support of my work over the years, I mean, I've done some crazy junk, I've said, I think this will be a good idea. And sometimes she'll tell me, no, that doesn't sound like a good one. And to be quite frank, she's right almost every time. So I've kind of just banked on that, that I've said, well, she's intuitive, right? I'm analytical. She's intuitive. So she'll see something and maybe not see a big picture on it, but she can, or not the details, all the different details, but she can kind of get a feel for how this is going to play itself out. And there have been times where, I have not taken her sage advice, and I've eaten a lot of crow. I've learned to simply just enjoy that and accept it, that she's, so when I tell the boys, you got to learn to saying the lady's right. I'm not saying that in a way that's just nostalgic and, everything else sentimental, but just simply saying, oh no, in fact, in my experience, this has actually been true. So you just need to get used to it, dude. It's the way it is. And, but we've learned to manage that in a complementarian styled way. Right. So the things that she has weaknesses on many times, not always, tend to be my strengths. And the things that are my weaknesses tend to be, though not always, her strengths. And we've learned over the years, rather than disagree over the differences of our strengths or our weaknesses, to say, look, this actually, we look at it and step back for a second, we can see that this can play itself out. Let's work together. Let's Bonnie and Clyde this thing. And so we've learned to do that, and for the better, man. Yeah, we've gone through some crazy stuff together with that model in mind, and it's proven to be just awesome, amazing wife. So when you're writing, Mercedes, like what are things that you have found to be really helpful, right? Like whether or not it's, not just the understanding that you need space, right? If that's the technique you have to have that kind of closed door thing, or if you're just like any moment you've got in between your day, however that works, like what are things that your husband's done that has really, really helped you? So that maybe even people who are listening who they may not themselves be writers, but maybe with a writer or with somebody who's professionally ambitious, that that they could also say, that's a good idea, or that I never thought of that, or even appreciate what they're already doing.
Yeah, well, my husband hates horror. He hates it. He just isn't. It's just not his thing. He's a very light, buoyant, happy guy. And he doesn't judge the fact that I'm into horror, which is really important. He knows I like it. He knows I'm good at it. He did watch The Quiet Place with me.
Yeah.
It was like,
yeah.
And once upon a time when we were first dating, we went and saw What Lies Beneath. I don't know if you guys remember that movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we, I'm like, come watch this movie with me. And he's like, I don't really want to. But we were like at the very first stage. We were, so he wanted to be really, I can pull myself together and watch this movie with her. He like climbed up my body during the whole movie, like, and just, he could not handle it. He's very, very sensitive. So one of the most important things I think that he does is he lets me like what I want to like without, insisting that I don't. And I don't like to go too super dark because I like to, I have a tendency to be depressed, to work for depression. So I try to not like I won't read The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum, even as phenomenal as his writing is, like we were talking about earlier. I know that I can't handle that emotionally and mentally. So I try and stay away from things that I know will break me because I'm not a masochist. But he'll support that. Or we have 3 kids and they're very busy, and our house is so small. It is so small that anyone speaking in one room can hear each other in the other. There's no privacy. And he'll try and keep them off my back a little bit, but it really doesn't work that way. My oldest son has Williams syndrome and severe autism. So he's just kind of in mama's grill. So we have some rules. The kids can basically interrupt me all the time with writing. If I'm doing a recording for a podcast, Luke tries to be interference. So, because otherwise he would always be, and he works from home now with the pandemic. So I try to ask very little of him in that way, like keep the kids, away. But when I do ask it of him, he's like on it, So, and there's like a time frame, after like an hour and a half, he can't, unless he's like physically barring the door and my kid's out there, no, then the kids start to trickle in. So at the end of almost all of my podcast interviews or whatnot, there's Nico, here's my daughter waving, like they just have hit the limit. And he just gives me I did my best, and I appreciate it. And one more thing is right now I'm in an Airbnb about 6 hours away from my house. I came up for a writer's retreat with my friend who got in a terrible car accident last night and is going through 2 surgeries today, but seems to be in good spirits because she is phenomenal. She's also an amazing writer. And her husband and my husband are like twins. And they were both willing to watch the kids and do all this stuff so that we could come together and have a couple days to write, because I have some really intense deadlines and it's just not happening at home. We've had so much going on. And for him to be like, my son had oral surgery to get his wisdom teeth out on Monday, and he doesn't understand and he's picking at his mouth, and it just, and we have soccer practice with the girls and volleyball practice with the girls. And for him to be like, you go for 4 days. I got this. I mean, that is ultimate support. Yeah. That's not easy for him. And he's going to be working the whole time. And the kids will pull together and help. But, I talked to my son for an hour on FaceTime today. Just here's the washer and dryer in the place. Here's mommy, like he just doesn't understand why mom's gone. Mom's never gone. And so for Luke to do that for me, I appreciate that more than the average bear. I'm never alone. I never have that moment. I'm writing at like 3 to 5 o'clock in the morning because it's the only time that it's kind of quiet. And even then it's not quiet because my son's up and, hey, mom. So this is phenomenal for me. I mean, that's huge. So,
wow. It's one of those things, as you were describing it, it reminded me, I haven't always been like that, like him, where I would expect that, right? It was one-sided. I would expect that because, I'm making shows, I'm doing live 2 to 3 hour long things. And so, and she's a housewife. She worked when we first got married and she worked later, but most of our marriage has been her being at home. And so there was this expectation. It was like, well, why aren't you running interference better? The kids are still coming down and all of that. But then I remember it was not that long ago, within the last 5 years or so, where I really started thinking about the fact that she has dreams too, right? She went to school and she left. She got her associates and then she left because she fell in love with this crazy Navy guy in Connecticut, and she drove out there to be with him, and she never went back. She never pursued that career that she had been working for diligently, and that she chose on purpose. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't, seat of her pants. Like, she thought about it, and she said, these are my skill. This is my skill set. This is what I love. It's what I want to do. And she put that on the back burner and then cranked out 6 kids, so she's cranking out a bunch of babies left and right, repopulating the earth and stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, what have I done for her? and I know that I provided finances. Our bills are always paid. We're never freaking out about food. I provide those basic things, but I said, but a person's more than that. Right.
Absolutely.
And I thought, what am I not doing? And so when her mom, a recent example, her mom talking about accidents, and by the way, sorry to hear that about your friend. My mother-in-law back in March, a couple days before my birthday, was in an accident. My brother-in-law died, and my mother-in-law, we kind of just recently this week got a baseline from the hospital that this is pretty much where they think she'll be at this point. It can change, but it's unlikely to change. And that if it does, it's by decimals, like therapy will help with certain things, but you're not talking major leaps. And that place involves her mom not knowing who she is. So her mom says things like, I want to see my daughter. I want to talk to my daughter. And she's standing right there. She's the only person in the room.
Oh, man. And
she doesn't know that she had a son. She doesn't know that she has grandchildren that love her. And it's a very sad situation. But when it first happened, it was so traumatic because, it's an accident. It's a car accident. So, I mean, she's going to grandpa's house and boom, 1 mile up the road, boom, you can see the sign to the place. Well, immediately thrown into a place where Angela's one of two children. The brother's dead. She's the only one. And all the family's in Korea. So she has nobody. The dad's out of the picture. He's in Washington State. And so there's nobody else. It's just her. So she goes there, and for like 3 weeks, she was there every single day. And she brought little Wolfgang, right, our youngest. And she was there with Wolfgang because he's breastfeeding and stuff. So he's there. But I now have 4 kids at grandma's house, right? We had to leave the city and stuff. And I was getting flustered about it. But I had to really think. And I as she's talking about it and crying and saying what she's going through and the sorrows and stuff. And I sat there and I thought, and I made a promise to her, and we're just like weeping in the car. And I told her, I said, you have done more things for me in my life than I deserved. You've done all these things. This right now, I'm committing. I said, I know I've done things before, but I said, from here out, it's different. There's something, I'm going to make it an active aim of mine to say, you know what? I got 4 kids. Great. For however many hours, I don't care. Right? How many days? I don't care. You need to do what you've got to do for your mother at this point. And it was one of those things that didn't come naturally for me, right? It didn't come overnight. It wasn't part of my personality to do that. It took different events. And as I said, I'd done it before with other things, but this was something acute. This was something like really heavy in that moment. And so it's like those little acts of big heroism, right, that your husband does to run interference. And sometimes people can downplay that, but I think the people who would downplay that probably don't do it very often themselves. and they find it really difficult. And so you got to give credit where it's due. You got to say, look at the stuff that they do. And so it's really cool that you mentioned that, because I think that a lot of times people overlook that.
Yeah, I think people assume that it's not a big deal, or they assume, and I'm a housewife. That wasn't my life's goal to be a housewife. I always wanted to be a writer, but when my son was born, he had so severe, his Williams syndrome was so severe. We were like, okay, I need to stay home with this kid. And my job was to keep him alive. My husband was still going through getting his his MBA in international business, and he was gone. I had this little baby that just kept trying to die. I lived at the hospital with him when we were in Seattle, and my husband would come by and visit when he could, but it was such an intense program. They told me he couldn't have a job. He was there, and he knew that, by him doing this later on, I mean, we're financially set now, that those sacrifices now have carried over so that I can write. I don't have to have another job, but it was crazy. So we divide things up in the way that we need to divide things, but we're really cognizant of what the other person is doing. And I've learned, this was hard for me, but I've learned to ask for what I want. Like, I always grew up in this, I don't know if this is a woman thing. I don't know if this is, a growing up in a religious community thing, but you just do your very best and you don't ask for anything. You're just so pathetically grateful for whatever crumbs anyone will give you. And I realized, and I tell this to my kids all the time, I'm like, you know, we don't have ESP. I can't just sit there and want something and need something and expect your dad or grandma or someone to figure out what it is that I need. I just need to ask, because people are like more than happy to help you. But there was always kind of like this shame in asking, like you should be able to do it on your own or figure it out. Mm-hmm. But I'll be like, look, I need you to, can you please do this for me with the kids? Or can I go to this? Or I want to go to, our deal is I get to go to one conference a year because it's so hard for me to leave. It's easier now that the kids are older, but it was impossible for years. It's just impossible. And my son just breaks down when I'm not there. I'm his comfort blanket, you know, when mom's not there, the world is not right. So I ask for what I need, and then we figure out what we can do about it. And like this week has been terrible. So not only, you know, my son with his wisdom teeth, but it's not healing. He's not doing well. Everyone's sick. We found a scorpion in the house right where my daughter was opening her birthday presents.
Oh,
for those of you, those of you that don't know, I was stung by a scorpion a couple years ago, and it took 2 vials of anti-venom to keep me alive. I was absolutely dying. I have some allergic reaction. So the scorpion in the house, we don't know if the kids will react the same way. So it's very stressful, and just everything was going wrong. And I'm like, I don't think I should go on this retreat with my friend. I just feel like there's too much going on. And my husband's like, no, you need to go. Like, for your own mental health, you need to go. And I've got this. And he does have it. Like, it's not easy. And it's, you know, right now he's without a car until tomorrow because everything's just nuts. But like, he's got this. And I know that the kids will be safe. Or if something happens, he'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, I'm not one of those moms that has to worry, like, is my husband capable of taking care of the children? Which some, you know, some spouses, one kind of takes care of the kids and the other just kind of, I don't even know what to do. I know he's got it. He'll figure it out, you know, and I can be here confident knowing that, you know, they're alive, they're eating, he's capable. And this is outside of his comfort zone. I mean, he's balancing all of his work, plus all of the stuff, plus all of the kids, and he's still like, no, you need to go. I mean, that speaks volumes. That was amazing. I would have canceled it. I would have stayed home and just eaten it. Then he's like, no, just, you need to be there.
It's ironic that you are doing what you're doing right now, and that we're having this discussion specifically about what he's doing, you know. Offering this sacrifice for you so that you can write and keep your sanity and get a break.
And you can be on Paleo Cheese.
Yes.
I mean, he's like, you have to do this. You have to be on that show.
But you don't understand.
Yes, you have to be on there. Yeah.
And
you know, go ahead.
It's important to appreciate it too, and not just like, okay, do this for me. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I remember. One of the things that I used to struggle with, you know, and you alluded to this, and I don't know if it was a struggle of yours, if the same as mine, but I'll just say what mine was, but alluded to it with the idea of like, you know, hey, why don't you come check out this horror film with me? That's what you do, right? So I'm into politics, I'm into religion and culture, and I talk about those things. And I read gobs of nonfiction, and I rarely ever blow off the dust of my fiction, which is, I've gotten better about it since the show, right? But it's one of those things. It's like, you know, I read these tomes, these ridiculous books, and there was a long time where I felt like to be really successful in what I wanted to do, that I really kind of needed her on board in a way that was more proactive, in the direct involvement, right? So saying like, well, I want to get involved in politics, like, you know, kind of there's people who will do this, that will say, look, I want to get into politics, you got to start going with me to conventions, you got to start dressing a certain way. They have a brand concept in their head. I didn't go to that extreme, but I still had this idea that, well, maybe you should read more news, because she doesn't read news. She doesn't really, you know, in the past she didn't. Or you need to learn this, you need to learn that. And I would get frustrated because I felt like I was alone. And over time, I started to really appreciate the fact that I was very much not alone, and that the things that she did bring to the table that made me better at my job was her non-involvement with my job. that it was those other things. And I know that some people might think this is a maybe diminishing way of saying this, but C.S. Lewis, if I remember correctly, one time said something along the lines of, they asked, does your wife know how to speak to you about philosophical and theological concepts? You're a practical genius. Does she do that? And he says, no, but she knows how I like my tea. And I know the American mind might say, well, that's
that doesn't sound good.
it doesn't sound good. It sounds diminishing. On the other hand, she knows how his real life.
It sounds intimate.
It's intimate. And tea to them is more than just your drink, right? So other things like, time for tea. I mean, you're talking breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So he's saying she knows my normal life. She knows who I am as a person. She knows, she provides for me in that realm, and doing that makes me who I am when I leave that realm and I go and do my best outside of that. And I've really come to appreciate that with my wife, that our relationship, it's kind of that way, that she knows, she knows my regular life. She knows my routine. She knows if there's something going on where I'm like really manic, because I'm diagnosed bipolar since 2002. And so if I'm going through certain things and she sees it, she'll talk to me, right? And say, look, hey, you got to cool it. Your emotions, or you're getting kind of out there on the fringe with things. You got to tone it down. And she knows that in a way that that other people wouldn't. And if she was more intimately involved, I feel that the focus would be on those things and not who I am or who we are as a family, that make me the best me I can be for when I am out there doing those things. And so I didn't know if that was anything that you've ever dealt with. It's maybe just me, right? But I didn't know that's something you dealt with, about wishing that he was more involved, but then appreciating the fact that he's just the best him, and he's letting you to be the best you, and that together you're the best us. And
in my writers group, my old writers group, the Illiterati, there was a couple, and they were both in a band together, and they both wrote, and their lives were so like meshed, and it worked out really well for them. But I noticed there was always like, okay, so who's going to stay home with the kids? Mm-hmm. Who's going to take care of real life? Because one of us wants to, they couldn't both be there all the time for all the things. And it was kind of a source of really difficult to figure out who was going to attend what things all the time. And it's nice to not have somebody with the exact same interests, because like, I don't care if he's going golfing. I'm not like, oh, I've got to go golfing. We're not going to fight over who gets to be on the green.
Yeah. Right.
And if have a conference, he is all supportive for me going to that conference, and relieved that he doesn't have to be there, Yeah. And so I like having that independence, because it's just kind of, I didn't realize what a problem that could be until I saw these two, beautiful people being like, oh, because they both want to be there, and they both want the other one to be there. And you don't want to like have a wonderful experience that the other one's going to want to be there for. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of like arguing about, no, I'll stay home. No, you stay home. But it's nice to not have that. Mm-hmm. And Luke not being part of the horror thing, like we were talking earlier, the horror community, it can be like so incredibly friendly, and it can just eat you alive, and it flips on a dime. And it's a lot of communities. It's not just the horror community, but there'll be some big drama, and I'll be really upset about it. And he'll just look at me and be like, I don't know those people. Like, this is a community here. And he's like, just turn your computer off and step back. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is all encompassing. And he's like, oh, no, and to have someone with that kind of perspective, like, what will this matter tomorrow? What's important? We're all right here in the kitchen, and that's what's important, So he doesn't feed into kind of my, because I get, frantic and anxious, and have, kind of depression and all these things. And he can step back and be like, and he can talk to me in a way that no one else can talk to me. And he can, I'll listen to him when I won't listen to anybody else. And sometimes I don't listen to him, but he knows, he knows my ups and downs, and he knows, and he'll be like, calm down. And I'm like, don't you patronize me. Don't tell me to calm down. And then he's like, okay, now that you've got that out of your system, calm down and take a breath, and it's okay. And like, he can bring me down when no one else on earth can, and him not being a part of all this is really nice, because he put, I mean, he'll be like, oh, I'm really happy you won the Bram Stoker. That's cool. You know, I'm really proud of you. But it's not like, you know, oh, you didn't win the Bram Stoker. You know, he keeps things on a very real and practical level. And I need that because I have a tendency to get kind of swept off in all of whatever's going on. It's a whirlwind, it's a tornado, it's a tsunami, and I'm right there with it. And he's like, come back. And what we say all the time is that like, he's a tether and I'm a kite, and I'm like all over the place, and he tethers me to the ground, and I kind of pull him up out of his, I won't say a rut, but he's very, you know, here's where he likes to be. And I'm like, let's do this and this and this. And he's like very calm, and I'll kind of pull him up into a little bit more of this, and he'll pull me out of this to a little more of that. And it just works out beautifully.
I was going to say anchor earlier. I was going to say, he sounds like your anchor.
Yeah.
Because I know my wife's mine. Otherwise, I'm, to use your kite idea, I'm a kite way, way out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to fly around and go nuts. Yeah, no going back. But I have that that person that says, and, you know, there's been times in the past where I really thought about it later, because it was like this ideal thing for me, almost like, what's the name? House of Cards. Right. I mean, they're evil people, right? But they're like the team, the Bonnie and Clyde of politics and stuff. And I was always like, man, this would be really cool. And you're both like hardcore, and you're just dominating left and right and stuff. And I realized later, I'm like, dude, I'd be miserable. You wouldn't
trust your wife.
I know, I wouldn't trust her. I'd be like, what? I don't know, you know. And I thought it's okay that I like stuff, you know, that I like reading nonfiction. She's like, what are you reading? I'm like, oh, I'm reading this 1,300 page book called Secular Age or something. And I'm like, what are you reading? And she's like, manga, you know. And I'm like, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And that's just the end of it. And sometimes we'll meet in the middle and stuff, but a lot of times we're kind of in our own worlds, but yet we have a shared universe. And that has really helped me, because, and it also, I was thinking when you were saying, you know, about the winning the award, and the way he's like, oh, you won the award. It'd be really tough if it was we lost the award, because then they're wrapped up in that. And that, so the rest of the family, that universe outside of
someone to pull you back to reality
would be toast, because then both of you would be bummed. And then your universe with your family and your home, that, and so, yeah. But you know, I appreciate you said that. Yeah.
I was going to tell you, Mercedes, I don't know if you're going to like, if this will put like weight on your shoulders, or if you will appreciate, I don't know how you'll take it, but I've always pictured you as this really strong woman, like exceptionally strong. And I know that you have your, you know, depression and anxiety, you know, and whatever, but because I've seen you mention it. I'm only mentioning on here because I've seen you mention it publicly.
Right, yeah, I'm open about it.
Yeah. But it's some of the stuff, and I know some of what you go through. You know, I just saw the thing the panel that you did with the other parents for through Dead Headspace, but that had nothing to do with it. My mind was already made up about, you know, you being a really strong woman, and a lot of that had to do with just you'll come on Facebook and you'll make some post about some horrible thing that happened or that you're going through, and it's just like, and even just like tonight, you just verified it. When you told us before we started recording about this horrible accident that your friend just happened to, and it's just like, and I know you care, but it was just like you didn't, it wasn't like devastating you in that moment. Like it wasn't, you know, I'm trying to figure out how to put into words what I'm trying to say, but just like, it's almost like you are accepting things on a whole other level than what most people do, and just be like, this is just what, you know, life, this is what I have to deal with. So why blow this up into, and I wish I could remember a couple of the things that you went through. I think it was last year, like right in a row, man. And I was like, man, she's going through hell. But your post didn't like really depict that. And I was like, man, if that was me, you know, I don't know. You just have always struck me as a really, really strong woman. And I think about that. I think that about pretty much all women anyway. And what, you know, raising children and giving birth and there's so many women that I think of as being so much more stronger than I am. And you would be one of those. So
thank you. That means a lot. There are definitely not strong moments, but I mean, I have hope. I have hope things will get better, or at least we'll make it through. We survived so far. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a bad couple of years for everybody.
Yeah.
But I do think, I don't know, I've seen people pull together. I think if you just accept what's going to happen, because things happen and you just can't change them, you know? So I try, and thank you.
Yeah. I love movies, and I love books that have like, and I know some women in my life that were at some point, I mean, I have an excellent mom. I have a great mom. But after I like moved out, because I moved out when I was 16, and after because I was in love and that's all I wanted to do is be around this person. And I was sick of curfews and I was sick of rules. And so I just, completely rebelled and moved out. But along the way, particularly in my late teens and early 20s, I met some women that I just held in such high regard, because they were like that. They were really, really strong, and they were kind of like this mother figure. So when I see that in a movie or film or something, I'm just really kind of drawn to that. And it's like that. It's like that. What's that book, The Shack? Isn't God in that book like a big black woman?
Yeah, it was.
There's something about.
I was going to say Octavius Butler, but maybe not. But
there's something, and I hope this doesn't sound bad, but there's something to me about a large black woman that feels kind of like safe, like this wise woman that talks like Joe Lansdale, with in the way that she gives wisdom, with just all this love that feels unconventional but is really productive. And I don't know. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but just talking to you made me think of all those, like some of the women in my life that have, like I've stayed, I did a lot of couch hopping. I was homeless for a while and stuff. So, I stayed with one friend for a year and his family, and, their mom was like that. And I had some another friend, his mom was like that, and some other people that I met places. And I just, I really, and that's probably why I do look at women and just think, man, you're just, especially when it comes to, like childbirth and carrying that child and then caring for that child, and just having that motherly instinct. And women are great, man.
It's true. There's something about a good mama energy. So I'm not, my husband's really into sports. I'm not into sports at all. I'm terrible at them. I played tennis in high school, and that was like it. And my daughter wanted to join volleyball, but they didn't have a coach. And they were like, please, will you be head coach? I'm like, you don't want me to be head coach. And I literally wrote on the paper, the application, like, if the hounds of hell are coming after you, that is when you should ask me, because we are that, I'm that not familiar with volleyball. And they messaged back and said, we're at that point. Like,
yeah, no.
So I'm my daughter's volleyball coach now. And these girls, they respond to that mama energy, like really, really well. Like, I don't know a lot about the game. I'm like crash coursing the rules and all these things. But, I know how to tell someone that they're doing a great job. I know how to tell someone that I saw you hustle for that, and that was phenomenal, and it was just really nice. One of the girls yesterday, she was like, I love you. And I was like, I love you right back. And women are great. And I think we're kind of coming into our own a little bit. Like, there's more positive media about women and things like that. Because we used to just be, you're like I was on a panel about fairy tales, and I went on a little bit of a rant. Like, if you're not the beautiful, sweet young thing getting married, you're a witch or you're the evil stepmother in fairy tales. There are no like, hey, I'm a 40-year-old woman that has something productive to add to the story. You're dead. You have the child and then you die because your role is done. And I like that women are kind of being thought of in a more, oh, hey, they're real people too way. I mean, it's taken too long, but we're real and we're here to stay,
Thinking about strong women, in my wife, just what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, she was having, because she's breastfeeding, right? We have a 9-month-old. His name is Wolfgang Phoenix, a very manly little guy, came out with a beard and a battle axe.
Right.
And so very manly, and real tough kid, but she's breastfeeding and she thought she had a clogged milk duct, right? And I can only imagine that is not comfortable at all. And so she's describing it and saying, I think I got this. Well, she's like, I got to breastfeed more. And she did. And it would kind of offset the pain a little bit, but it didn't go away. And I started getting nervous because my sister thought the same thing. And the clogged milk duct started to get much bigger. And all of her friends were saying, oh, it's just what it is. And it was cancer. And so she didn't go in for a long time, and so she has stage 4 breast cancer, and so her whole life now is dedicated to certain protocol to deal with that, and she's doing really great. But so I'm nervous about it, right? I'm like, okay, look, you're saying it's painful, it's lasts like a week, and she's just a trooper. She's continuing to do what she's doing. Well, then it starts. She said that her breast was actually hard, right? The part of it was hard, and I knew that was bad. I'm like, look, you gotta go in. So she said that, well, if it doesn't clear up in the next couple of days, I'll do the breast pump thing and everything. Well, long story short, she ended up getting, she was extremely tired one day, and she told me she had to sleep. So I'm like, I'll watch the kids, just take a nap. Well, she passed out like on the chair. I'm like, I've been married for 19 years with her, and she's never just like fallen asleep sitting down with her arms on the armrest, never. And I said, she must be really tired. Well, then she stood up about an hour and a half later, shivering like crazy. And she's like, I'm so cold. And she's like, I need a blanket. I'm like, so I'm asking questions, COVID related things like, are you trouble breathing? Everything's no, none of that. So she says, I need to go take a nap, goes upstairs, wakes up. She has 102.5 fever. And she says she needs help down the stairs because she's dizzy. And I'm looking up things, I'm like, we need to go like right now. So we went. She said, okay. So we went. Sepsis. She had mild sepsis. Blood pressure was like 97/63 with a resting heart rate of 140. And they said she's borderline severe and they needed to get her in. I didn't realize this because she's just smiling. She's upbeat. She's talking about the baby. Well, you can leave the baby here. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like you need antibiotics like stat. Like you need them like yesterday. And I said, you need to get them. And she's not processing this in part because it's blood poisoning to her brain. They were trying to tell her what to do. And she would say yes, but then she wasn't doing it. And they'd say it again. And she still wasn't doing it. And then it went on for like 5 minutes. And I said, this is actually affecting her brain. It was a very scary situation. And yet the entire time she was smiling and she was just herself, upbeat. And I'm thinking, dude, if that was me, no way. Like I'd be the guy freaking out. Like, you take the kids. I'm gonna be here. I wouldn't be like, oh, just keep the 9-month-old big lug of a kid around. I'll breastfeed him. No, I would have been in a zone. I said, but here she is, and she's just so strong in that moment. And even when she realized like the severity of it and how it could potentially go bad. I mean, they had to ask her, should we resuscitate? Like, what do you want about resuscitation if your heart stops? That's a weird thing to even have to talk about. And they had to ask her, and so there were conversations that were really, really tough. And yet there she was. And so it was one of those things. And I started to realize that through so much of it, she was, and there have been a few times where she relied on my strength and not vice versa. When our daughter had cancer, she died about 5 years ago, and she had brain cancer, our firstborn. And there was a time when she was going through these things called hypothalamic storms, and it's a lot like a seizure, and so it's kind of like fireworks going off in the brain, and your whole body is very, very intense moment, very scary and painful. And so she's going through these, and they couldn't figure out what it was at the hospital. And so she's just one after another of these experiences. And they said, it's not a seizure. They did tests for it, and she's not having seizures. So they didn't know what they could do. Well, it was really late, like 2 a.m, and she's going through it, and I'm holding her hand. And I remember it was a sad moment because it was so overwhelming for so long that she was sitting there on the bed, and she looked at me, and tears just pouring down her face because she was helpless. Totally, we all were. And she looked at me, and she covered her face. And I said, that has to be the most dire place in the universe, because this is her firstborn. She's the strong one. But right now, she needs me to be that too. So I need to step away. And I stepped away from the show. I said, I was live radio, so I'm like live AM, FM radio, calling stuff. I said, I took a hiatus, said I can't do it. I said, I had a co-host that took over for months, in fact. And I said, I need to be there, not just for my daughter, for my wife. And so there have been times where, and most of the time, I'm only bringing that up because that's like the one time in my whole life where my strong wife has needed the strong man, right? Other than that, she's like, look, I'm pretty good at this. But sometimes it even requires the professional side of the yin yang, the one that's the ambitious professional person that's trying to strive, to sometimes say, I got to step back too. This is my sacrifice to say, the universe is bigger than this, this thing. We got to focus on family first. And, but I wanted to ask you something. And we don't normally ever talk about this, but it's something that has, you talked about hope, but faith, right? Not everybody listening is a person of faith, but, I'm curious to know how, because you got married inside of the temple, right? I don't know if that can't go on, let me know. We'll take
that's fine. Yes.
Okay, so you got married inside the Mormon temple, right?
Yes.
And so
you had like
both...
some gorilla wedding, Jeremiah. You think she had some gorilla wedding? Hurry, go in now.
Well, no, man, it's part of the rights, I mean,
okay.
that's
I don't know.
It's part of the rights. It is, and so that's an important thing.
Say I do. We gotta go.
That's an important thing, man. So like, so okay. But so you're both Mormon or LDS, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're both LDS. What role has faith? How have you seen faith help the two of you, not just in your professional life, but in your relationship together, your family structure, that's given you, that's helped you along the way?
Well, for us, we're both active LDS, and so we believe in not divorce. I mean, we believe in divorce. You can be divorced, but that's not kind of our first. We really want to try everything before being divorced. So when things are like, oh, well, I'm really frustrated with you, divorce was never on the table, or like, geez, you're so obnoxious. I hate the way you leave your socks in the middle of the living room floor. Divorce was never on the table. And so we're in it for the long haul. And that's been good for me because I do, like, bringing up the depression again, severely depressed. I'm doing really well after doing something called TMS therapy, which is transcranial magnetic therapy, where they put a magnet and kind of stimulate your neurons in your brain the same time every day for like 6 to 8 weeks. So my brain realizes now, it's like muscle memory. My brain realizes it needs to fire and get these neurons going, because before they were shooting like boo, boo, and now they're like normal. And I was always afraid, oh, well, he's just going to leave me because being with a person with depression is really, really hard, and he's like, well, no, I won't. I mean, we're in it. We're in it to win it. And our son, when he was born, that took a lot of faith, because our plan was we were going to move to Russia, go live in Moscow. My husband had a international business degree, and we were going to just live there and do those things. And when Nika was born, he had such severe heart problems. There would have been no way he would not have lived if we hadn't been right next to this really phenomenal hospital in Seattle. So it changed everything. It changed all our plans. It threw everything up in the air. And like I said, my goal wasn't to be a housewife. That wasn't what I had dreamed for myself. I feel fulfilled now, but a lot of it's because I'm doing writing. I don't feel like women were created to just do laundry, you know, and things like that. Yeah. But that's what I do, because my husband makes the majority of the money with his degree. So that's how we've decided, you know, I'm home, I'll do the laundry. Like, I'm literally at home. Why would I not do it? You know, we're all pitching in to do it. But that was hard. And that took a lot of faith, because he didn't speak until he was 7. And I remember we gave him a blessing. The blessing is something that we do in our church, where you lay your hands on a person and give him a special blessing from God. And the blessing said he'll speak. And I was like, whoa, because they told us he would never speak. Mm-hmm. And it took another 2 years, but he'll say certain things. He talks short and quick, small, short sentences, but he can be like, you know, mama this, daddy that. And I love that he's 18, he still calls me mommy. And he's like, you know, mommy, French fries, mommy, you know. Mm-hmm. And so he can tell us the things that he wants to tell us. And it was so frustrating when he couldn't. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys know this, but my youngest was actually a triplet. And we had triplets, and 2 of them passed away and 1 of them survived. And that was just that rocked our world, right? But I believe things will we can do hard things, you know, we can do hard things. And so I think that if I didn't have faith and he didn't have faith, because there are a lot of things we just don't know how to deal with, like, oh, our kid's having a really tough time with this, or, you know, the triplets, that just devastated us. And, you know, all these different things, like, to me, it is good to feel that there's an outside source, and the way that God is thought of in the LDS religion is not the angry Old Testament God that I read. You know, when I read the Bible, it leaves me feeling cold and sad and scared. Like the way that we see, we call him Heavenly Father more than God. Whenever we're praying, it's Dear Heavenly Father, it's not God. As a very warm, caring individual that wants good things for us. We believe that he has a wife, we have a heavenly mother, that Jesus Christ is our brother. So when we will pray about these hard things, we believe that there's a source that genuinely cares about us, that is like, you know, we're here to support you. It doesn't mean that, you know, God will stop bad things from happening, because that's not how it works. I believe, you know, we believe a lot in the power of agency, and that we can make our own choices, and that, you know, we as parents don't stop every bad thing happening to our kids because they need to grow and learn. But I mean, it's helped a lot. It's helped astronomically for us, because everybody has hard times, but sometimes I feel like we're just rolling through more than seems our fair share. But having that source to draw on, where we feel that somebody loves us, really helps. It's like extra support.
Yeah, when we went through our stuff with our daughter, I had left Catholicism and was an atheist. That's why I said earlier I was part of a secular organization, and we went through some crazy times, and we were strong through those times. And you know, a lot of people kind of idealized us, you know, as a family, as parents, as a husband and wife, things like that. Because we were very public about what was going on, keeping people updated and stuff. So a lot of people kind of rallied around that, but it reached a point, you know, somebody asked me this question about, you know, do you feel her, you know, your daughter after she died? Someone asked me in a live thread one time, they said, you know, do you feel the presence of your daughter? And at the time I said yes, because, you know, I was very just purely materialistic, and I'm looking around, seeing stuff and saying, yeah, you know, the balloons are here. I got these get well balloons that she had and stuff, and they're right next to my desk, and I've got the painting behind me, 2 different paintings that she did, and I've got all this. But I remember one day, I remember sitting down on the man chair in our living room, and I realized that I hadn't heard the pitter patter of her footsteps on the stairs for a very long time. And it was kind of this weird moment, kind of like, you know, if for those who've been in high school sports, that when you're out of high school, you get to this place where it hits you all of a sudden. I'll never feel that energy of being in the 4th quarter playing basketball with the coach sweating profusely with a red face, growling at me from the sidelines, and the crowd cheering, and or just practice, you know, running around the court, you know, grumbling and complaining that the coach is making you run laps and stuff. that you will never experience that again. It's gone. Right. You're out of high school. You're not going to be the weirdo going back to play the 25, 40-year-old person on the team. Right. It's not real. And so you have that kind of experience in it for those who are really involved in that. And it's meaningful. It can be really hard. Well, that was kind of the closest thing to analogy to how I felt. And I remember I went into the office and the balloons had deflated all the way. It was flat on the ground. And I hadn't noticed how time had taken place because you're in this blur of everything. And it was really tough. We went through some really hard times after that for, about a year, really hard. And we found ourselves going back to the faith and the role that it plays in our lives and stuff. And it's not to say that people who don't have that can't go through those things. I know people who do. But I know the role that it played for me. And I was curious. And so I know that that's way outside of the normal Overton window for this show. we generally don't talk about faith at all. Like except Chad's faith in aliens and ghosts and stuff. Well, and all that. And
my on the fence faith,
is on the fence. He's really close though. He's really close. But that's the closest we ever get. But I thought about it and I said, we're talking about spouses. You'd mentioned where you guys got married and stuff. And so I'm like, I wanted to ask you that. And so I'm really glad I did. And, I understand when you're talking about that, going through those things and seeing how the role that plays and even giving you an idea for that you can make it through, right? That God is still there. God genuinely loves you. And that, that you can make it through. And so I just wanted to ask you. So I'm sorry, Chad, for going way outside. I know I went outside the Overton window, dude.
That's fine. That's
but I wanted to ask.
Oh. That's fine. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, we can wrap
it
up.
We mentioned let's get out here, man.
Yeah, we're good. We're at an hour and 16. So that's good because we spent about 15 minutes after we started recording.
Did you wanted me to mention something? I'm just going to go ahead and mention it right now briefly. We don't normally look at our reviews on iTunes and stuff like that because most people don't. I'm a huge podcast fan and I've listened to just so many podcasts over the last decade, and I have some of my favorites and I never leave reviews. So I know it's rare to get one, so I usually don't check, but we saw one and it kind of sums up what my hope for was for the show from the get-go and that what people would get out of it. And so I read it to you, Jeremiah. You wanted me to yesterday. I did. You wanted me to read it now. So
I'll go ahead, dude, because you weren't sure you wanted to read it. Now you're doing it. Yeah.
Well, the reason why is because yes, this summarizes basically everything that I was hoping people would get out of it. So it says, today was a sad day. Approximately a month ago, excuse me, I came across this podcast. I had no idea who Jeremiah and Chad were, but they had an interview with one of my favorite authors. After hearing that episode, I proceeded to binge on the show daily. Well, today I finally finished the catalog and I'm extremely sad. This show makes you laugh, tugs at your heartstrings, and gives you the feeling of hanging out with an old friend. Give it a try and you'll appreciate the sincerity of it. You may also find out which spider Jeremiah's nipple hairs resemble. So with the exception of the last sentence, but particularly, making you laugh, tugging on your heartstrings, the feeling of hanging out with the old friends. I can relate to not knowing anything about somebody on a podcast, whether it be a podcast about writing or horror films or board games or, screenwriting. And then you get to know these people that don't know who you are. Yeah. And then, and that's what I feel that for so many, it's like they become like these, not really mini celebrities, but it's like they're in your head, when you're every week, when they're talking for an hour or two, and when you're doing that for, a handful of years, you really get to know these people. And so that was my hope for listeners, was for people to not really know us, fall in love with us.
Dude. And we're obviously in their head because homeboy knows about the kind of spider that my nipple hairs look like,
which I didn't even know what he was talking about.
Yeah. And dude, I looked because we without getting too much information, yesterday when I made a joke about it, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, Daddy Longlegs, dude. I said, it looks like Daddy Longlegs. I said, with the nipple being, And he's like, don't they all? And we get in this conversation on the
next thing I know,
chat.
I got my shirt pulled up.
He does. He's looking at it. And so last night I'm looking, man, I'm talking to my boys about it. And they're like, really? It looks like Daddy Longlegs. I lift it up and I'm like, I look like Zangief, man, from Street Fighter 2 now. I said, I've got so much chest hair now that I'm much older that joke, when I first joked about it, I think I was in my 20s, man. And I'm like, it doesn't look like that anymore. It's like a tarantula now. So it's outdated, man. But you know what? That was so cool. Does it have a name or is it anonymous? What is that?
Let me check. No, it's just, Rock City, ROCC City.
Okay. Well, look at that. Well, I'm glad you mentioned, and I am glad, Mercedes, that you came on. And I'm really glad to have met you, to made your acquaintance.
Yeah, so nice to meet you. I walked in, you're talking cigars. I'm like, we've got to hang out.
And you got it, yeah. And the leather rose.
Leather Rose. Yes, yeah. What was the name of the company? I got it right here. What's the name of the thing on there? This is Sugar Skull. Sugar Skull.
Sugar Skull. Yes, Deadwood Tobacco Company. It's the best cigar I've ever had. And I'm not paid to say that. I don't know anybody over there. We were like, how much money they giving you? Millions. Millions of dollars. Oh, boy.
So, Mercedes, what do you got going on? Anything? I know you're writing big time this weekend.
Yes.
What do you have? Do you have anything coming out? Or
I do. I have something really exciting coming out. It's called the Black Mariah series.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there are 10 different writers, and we're each writing a novella set in this shared world. There's a book trailer for on YouTube, Black Mariah, and it's a conspiracy theory sort of thing, and the government or whatever. Anyway, there are all these attacks that are happening, and it takes place in each like separate town. So I'm writing about Vegas, which is where I'm from, and they're all going together. So you read, if they're called an episode, you read an episode a week. They'll drop a week, so it's like you can just read it. That's really exciting. I'm working on a short story collection, which nice. I'm really excited about. And I sold my novel, Darling, which will be out from Black Spot Books next year. And it has actually wrote about a child based on my son in that. So there's a kiddo with his just his little quirks and a lot about him, and just a lot going on, which is really, really cool. So
that's very cool. And that Black Mariah thing sounds interesting.
It's epic. What is so cool about it and a little daunting is that everything has to fit together with all these 10 different authors.
Yeah.
So they're all happening kind of at the same time, in the same time period. So there's a whole bunch of communication. And
is there one person in charge that's like assigning things, or?
Marie Jones. She does. She writes for what is it? Ancient Aliens. I want to say Ancient Aliens. I'm not sure. She does a lot of those. Your own personal God and faith.
Yeah.
Ancient Aliens and things like that. So she kind of gave us like, here's what we need to know. Here's what's going to happen in this time period, so that we're all, not all over the place. Like, here's the name of, the leaders, so that we all know.
Right.
But it's really cool. It's really cool to be so involved with all the other writers and just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So each story takes place in our own separate area with our own separate characters, but there's this overarching theme. And it's gonna be epic. I mean, I'm seeing what other people are turning in, and it's amazing.
I kind of did something like that with like 5 years ago. I was asked to write a novella in an existing world. My friend Jay Thorne wrote a novel called American Demon Hunters, and he handpicked I think 4 other authors to write novellas in the world. We pitched him an idea, and then we had to do this very extensive grid outline thing, which I'd never done before. I don't write with outline.
Yeah,
I don't do
neither.
that, but this one was very, very thorough, very extensive. I had to do this. There's a book on it. He has an actual certification to even teach this form of gridding. I can't remember what it's called, but it's crazy. And so we had to use that. It was a little frustrating, and it ruined a lot of the fun for the writing, because it was I already know what happens at point B, so I just got to write A to B, and then I know what happens at C, so I got to write B to C now, and then C to D, and nothing felt spontaneous, But I was appreciative of it, and we all wrote stories based on like our hometown. So my book is called American Demon Hunters, Battle Creek, Michigan. And it's not very, it's not something that I, it's up on Amazon, but it's not something that I ever like promote or anything. And I don't think he does either. He's doing other stuff, but, because it's so kind of not me. I mean, I still managed to make it like this coming of age thing. And it's cool, especially for people who are from Battle Creek, because it has so much Battle Creek in it. A lot of the stuff that's in it doesn't exist anymore, but so it's like I'm proud of it, but I'm not, kind of thing, because it was early writing, and it was like, if it was nothing I would have ever, the whole concept, written on my own. But I'm really thankful for the opportunity and stuff, and it reminded me of that we weren't working together though. It was just like, okay, you got Battle Creek, okay, you got New York, and you are doing Australia, right? And we had like an Australian one, and the rest of them were in the States. So we weren't working together. It was just, we just all happened to be doing them, and then they were released. So
in that world, I have more freedom than that. So it's fun. It's still fun for me. But people that can organize and outline like that, that's great for them. That's not how I write.
Yeah.
So,
and that would have been a headache to, we had certain rules, like, here's your main 3 characters. You cannot kill them, and then other certain rules, because all of these were standalones. There wasn't like part 1, part 2, part 3. So you should be able to pick up any of them. I mean, you should start with the original novel, but you can go to any other state or whatever and see this little, almost like Hardy Boys versus the Demons, or our Supernatural, if you will, I guess, almost. But it wasn't like 2 guys. It was like a couple, and then the guy's the kid. So, but yeah, it was different, man, for sure. But I'm thankful for the experience.
Well, Chad,
yeah,
how can people get in touch with us, dude, and put more reviews on there, dude? How can they do that?
Why would you want to do that?
What? Because they love the show, man. Because they love the show for all the reasons that other cat liked the show.
Yeah. I mean, the best way, I guess, is to type in paleo diet, right?
Oh yeah, right. Or the paleo craft. Paleo craft. It's like Minecraft for
it's the first
dinosaurs.
thing that pops up, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
No, paleo cheese with a Z.
Yeah.
We've got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and email, which is paleocheese@gmail.com. That's with a Z again, the cheese.
And one word. If you post it 2 words, dude, Google will think you're literally looking up paleo diet cheese. That's
one word.
Yeah.
It's looking for a cheese heavy paleo diet.
Yeah, right.
Then and YouTube, which you're either already listening on wherever it is you get your podcast and you're just listening to audio, or you're on YouTube watching our faces. And if you are, what do the kids say? Smash the subscribe button and
smash like, man. Yeah, you got to smash like it.
Smash the notification bell so you can be notified whenever we have new ones up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and send us some hate mail or some love mail, love letters.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's a good show. And again,
and I forgot to tell Mercedes at the beginning, this is a fake goodbye, so don't go anywhere. But yeah, so thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
And having this cool topic thing. We've changed the format, and this has been pretty cool having these cool discussions, and still gonna do the horror movie thing, but we'll probably do that just on our own, right, Jeremiah? Or maybe with special guests.
A little bit now and then. People get depressed if we didn't. Right? And
with Hunter Shea and Jim Campisi,
we're gonna see them a lot more.
Sister podcast,
yeah,
kind of. So,
all right. Well, until next time, my friend.
Yes, until next time.
Every person's story has something to teach us. How others view life, how obstacles are overcome, how joy is felt, how fears are faced, how love is expressed. The Matters of Faith podcast explores individual stories of people's lives and how faith plays a part. It may not be your story, but it may help shape yours.
The Matters of Faith podcast with Jay Wilburn is on Project Entertainment Network.